you got, and I'll take that into consideration. So I want to just go over something before we look at the one for next time. So who can tell me what this chart is? This chart here, what is it? It's the... Right, conjugations are verbs, that's right. So it's a declension. So what is this chart? Okay, what is the word haseha in Greek? Right, so it's the relative pronoun. Okay, so a relative pronoun is who or which in English. Relative pronouns agree with the words they modify in gender and in number, but the case comes from its function within the relative clause in plain English. Whenever you have a who clause, it's a mini sentence, right? But the who can be lots of different cases. Look at this sentence. The man is my friend. In Greek, what case would man be in? And why would it be in the nominative case? It's the subject to the sentence. My friend, what case would my friend be in? It would be in the nominative. Why would it be in the nominative case? Is a grammatical equal sign, so this is a predicate nominative, and you get a little hint there that it's pointing back. So the man is my friend. Okay, very important before we go on. Does everyone understand why both those words would be in the nominative case? So in this sentence, it is I or it is me. Which one of those sentences is grammatically correct in English? It is I. It sounds stuffy, but it's grammatically correct because I is the nominative case. You with me? Okay, consider the sentence, the man is my friend. The man whose house is yellow is my friend. What case would house be in? And why would house be in the nominative case? It's the subject of the relative clause. Relative clause is a who or which clause. So, right, so think of a who or which clause as a mini sentence. It can't stand by itself, but it kind of functions as a mini sentence within the bigger sentence. So that's called a subordinate clause in English. Or it's also called a relative clause. So a relative clause is introduced by a relative pronoun, and it introduces in effect a mini sentence. So is everyone with me why the word house would be in the nominative case? All right? And if yellow is the predicate adjective, the house is yellow, what case would yellow be in? It would also be nominative because it is a grammatical equal sign. Okay, so here's the tricky thing. If I want to say the house of whom is yellow or whose house is yellow, which one of these cases would I have to put who in to get it to mean the man is my friend, the house of whom is yellow? What case would I have to put it in? This is good. This is good because we've identified a place where we're all a little confused. Petra, make the case for it being in the genitive case. it would be the of whom. The man is my friend, the house of whom is yellow. Okay, so this is a perfect example. What gender do I have to put the whose? Do I say, whose house is yellow? Because he's going to punch me in the nose. I've just called him a girl, right? Do I say, whose house is yellow in neuter? I've just called him a thing, right? I have to pick this one, right? So the word who has to agree with the word it modifies in gender and number, but the case comes from its function within the subordinate clause. That's clear now, isn't it, Petra? Like you see, all right, consider this sentence. The man is very old for whom I worked. The man for whom I worked is very old. What case is the man in? Nominative, because it's the subject of the main clause. What case is old? Because it's the predicate adjective. Is a grammatical equal sign. I worked. What case am I in? Nominative, because it's the subject of the subordinate clause. And what case would for whom? Sorry? Dative. That's exactly right. And why would it be in the dative case? It's the indirect object. That's the primary use of the dative case. To or for whom the action of the main verb is done. I painted the house for my grandmother. For my grandmother in Greek would be in the dative case, and it would be feminine singular. If I said for my grandmothers, it would be in the dative case, but it would be in the feminine plural. Right? The direct object receives the action of the verb. I painted the wall. I painted the wall for my mother is the person to or for whom the action of the verb is done. You with me? So when you have who or which, the gender and the number come from the antecedent. So if I said the woman is my friend whose house is yellow, woman becomes feminine, and so the whose house is yellow, goes to feminine, right? And if I said the men are my friends whose house is yellow, then I have to go to masculine plural genitive. So I'd have to, my of whom would have to be here if I said the men whose house is yellow are my friends. This is masculine plural, so my who has to be masculine plural. But the genitive comes from its function as the house of whom. You with me, Carter? Okay, so the main rule is the nominative is going to be the case of the subject of the sentence or the predicate nominative. All right? The accusative is going to be the direct object. I painted the wall. The wall receives the action of the verb, so it's in the accusative case. So which one of these sentences is right in English? He accused me of the crime, or he accused I of the crime. And why is it he accused me? because me is the accusative case in English, and I is the nominative case. So if I said I accused him of the crime, him would be in the accusative case. So those are the two main ones, right? But we have two more. The genitive is the of case. The house of him is smelly, right? Of him, you take the word he, but you put it in the genitive case. And that becomes of him, right? The dative case is used less than the genitive case is, and it's the case to or for whom the action is done. I painted the house for my mother. Did I paint my mother? No. So is my mother in the accusative case? No. What's in the accusative case? House, because that receives the action of the painting. But that action was done for someone else's benefit. And the person for whom the benefit was done is put in the dative case in Greek. So if I say, I live my life for God, okay, what case is I? No, because it's a subject. What's the verb in that sentence? Live. What's my life in that sentence? Okay, so the two things at the end, to have a predicate nominative, you've got to have an is verb. So if it's not an is verb, then the line's going to go straight up and down, and that's going to be the direct object. Sorry? It'll be accusative, because the accusative receives the action of the verb. I live my life, what receives the action of that living, my life, for God. What case is for God? In the dative case. And guess how many other cases there are that we have to learn in Greek? 0 cases. We have these 4. These are the 4 that are used. Right? So subject or predicate nominative, the of case, the to or for case, and then the direct object case, which is the direct object is what receives the action of the verb. And that's how you remember it. Right. So if it's like is or seem or appears to be, all those can take, predicate nominatives. But if it's any kind of action verb, he hit the wall, whatever receives the action of the verb is going to be an accusative case. Right. So this is the of case in Greek. That's your first thing. So when there's not going to be a word of in Greek, it's only going to be in the genitive case. So if you want to say of God, the love of God constrains me, you take the word theos, you take the os off the end, and you replace it with u. And the u turns theou into of God. If you want to say for God, you say theo. There isn't a word to or for indirect object. There's just the dative case, and the dative case implies to or for.
So on the example where you gave the genitive, that was whose house is Joe, right?
Right.
So it would be like the house
Of whom. That's exactly. So you picked up that of whom and whose is the same thing, right? Does that make sense to you? So, like, we need to make sure we get those fundamentals, like, And it's never wrong to ask a question and say, hey, I don't get something.
So to go along with that example of the love of God constrains me. In English, you have 6 words. In Greek, you only have 4.
Or constrained 3 words, yeah.
3 words instead.
Or 4, you're right. Me, yeah. Yeah,
You only have 4 words instead of those 6.
that's exactly right. Most languages work this way. It's only our language that doesn't.
That's why I don't like English. I'll just be honest. I can't stand the language I speak.
Okay.
Well, thank God we grew up speaking it natively and didn't have to learn it.
So we have 9 minutes. So we want to do the vocabulary. This is what we'll study for Monday. Peri means around. It takes a genitive case. Okay? Mnemonic devices. Perimeter. Peri the platypus walks around me. Is sneaking around. Okay? So do you see the effectiveness of that mnemonic device? Because it's so stark. You hear the word Peri, you think of Peri the platypus. You can see Peri the platypus walking around you, and boom, all of a sudden you've got that word in your midterm memory because you came up with a really good mnemonic device. Mnemonic devices are just tricks to memorize things. Augustine has a famous mnemonic device where he thinks of the house he grew up in and he walks through it, numbering the rooms. And what he does when he has to memorize a list is he walks through his house and he puts stuff in the rooms. And then when he wants to remember the list, he just walks through. If he had a sister, he envisions his sister's room. He envisions his parents' room. He envisions the bathroom, the dining room, the kitchen, the formal living room, the piano room, and the front door. And all of a sudden he's got 9 ways to... That's a mnemonic device. So a mnemonic device is a way to get something in your midterm memory quickly. So Peri, may. So you know how you say go dogs in Greek? Ite kunes. Go dogs. Sick 'em. You know how you say roll tide? Me genoito. May it never be.
How do you say go balls?
Ita would be go. Ita thelontes. Ita thelontes. So if you can remember me genoito is don't roll tide, you can get not. But maybe you come up with a better one. That's mine. Oh, I may not do it. Yeah.
If you have like a rude teacher and you're like, may I go to the bathroom? No, you may not.
Okay, now here we have a great word, because what is it? It's a relative pronoun plus the indefinite article tis. Has tis, hu tini, ho, or hu tenas, ho tini, han tenon. Like, it's just 2 Greek words,
Jammed together.
and it means who, ever.
Huh.
So that's where German gets its...
That's exactly right.
The Greek.
Oh, did you say that's where Jerome gets it from?
German.
Oh, German.
Like,
Like
no.
I thought you
crashing words
I thought
together.
you were the guy who did the Latin Vulgate. I was like, I gotta read the Latin Vulgate.
So on is a hypothetical particle. You don't translate it, but it introduces the optative, which is the case of highest doubt. So whenever you see that, you know, oh man, whatever the verb's saying is like not even close to reality. If I were a carpenter, I would build a beautiful house, but I'm not a carpenter. Okay, so the on would kind of tell you that.
What does optative mean? Can you just explain it?
So we've studied like indicative verbs. I paint the wall. A subjunctive verb would be I should paint the wall. The optative is one step further. I might paint the wall. Yeah, that's exactly it. So Sue, Hume, Sumone. Can you guess where we might get the word you from? Can you hear Kai Su Teknon? Can you hear how after 2,000 years Su becomes you? This is actually our word, you. They just spelled it this way, you. Anna is up. So the Xenophon's Anabasis is the march up to the sea. Kata is down. So an anastrophe would be an upturn. A catastrophe would be a downturn. So my Greek teacher, one of my Greek teachers, taught me that this word haughty is actually where we get our quotation marks from. Like he said that he was a good person. Like that he was a good person quote may actually come from this word. The two little marks there. Our whole language, I mean, our question mark is just a turned upside down semicolon, and the semicolon is the Greek question mark. So well, we're making up for that deficiency now, aren't we? A is if. My mnemonic device is actually another word in Greek, ae, which means always. And if a is an alpha privative, then ae means no if. So if you make a promise to always love someone, then you're promising no if. So I don't know if that's my mnemonic device, but Allah, Saleh, Allah, we get the word like allotropic or allophone or lots of words. But it doesn't mean but, because the word that means but is accented on the last syllable. Appa is from, it takes the genitive. We get like apologia, from defense, right? Apologetics. Fami is I say. There's a stupid joke called the beer that made Melfami Walkus. Have you ever heard that joke? That's my mnemonic device. I say it was the beer that made Melfami Walkus. Maybe Lego is more logical speech, and this is more utterance speech. I say, I will say, I said. These two will be extra credit, so it's just Fami. Hupa plus the genitive is by. In the sentence, the house was painted by me. Do you know what I mean when I say a passive verb? You know, they tell us in English, don't write in the passive voice.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in Greek, that's not true. So passive voice is when the subject of the verb is acted upon. The house was painted. The house is the subject, but the verb is passive. And so hupa denotes the agency of a passive verb. The house was painted by me. And in English, they say don't say that because you use 6 words when you could have just said I painted the house. Well, in Greek, they use the passive because it's the same number of words. And they have passive participles, passive infinitives, passive everything. And they use it all the time. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say that one of the most delightful evenings I had in my college experience was when we chose to speak only in the passive voice. A good time was had by all. You got that. You got that.
Because he said it in.
Pollo, as I make, all these are extra. Un is therefore it's post-positive, and logos we know. Nice thing is no new sentences in a little Greek boy, but just read through and get these 15 down. And we'll be in good shape. I'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.